inside you and make you fall. That gets you going and coming back. Cause it's that liquid crack. Yes indeed, it's your boy Dabrand knows, and as you already know, we live. 2:14, 4:03 in the afternoon. Let's go, let's get it, let's pop. Check it out, check it out. What's that thing you sipping on? What's that in that cup? I'm trying to keep this humble dog, but this system is corrupt. Now they don't give a fuck, so we about to pop it off. You coming from that liquor store, my dog, can you drop it off? That liquid gold, that once that gets inside you and make you fall. That gets you going and coming back. Cause it's that liquid crack. It's the Brando knows, and I'm that liquid crack. Yes, you already know. Let's get it up for you, Zoe. What's that thing you sipping on? What's that in your cup? I'm trying to keep it humble, dog, cause this system is corrupt. Now they don't give a fuck, so we about to pop it off. You coming from that liquor store, my dog, can you drop it off? That liquid gold, that once that gets inside you and make you fold. That gets you going and coming back. Cause it's that liquid crack. It's your boy Dabrand, give it up. Clinton's fiery testimony shakes the city. We gonna get into all that right about now, you know what I'm saying? 40 Wolves. And my man Wolfman Park in the back. Give it up. Come on, what's that thing you sipping on? What's that in your cup? I'm trying to keep it humble, dog, cause this system is corrupt. Say they don't give a fuck, so we about to pop it off. You coming from that liquor store, my dog, can you drop it off? That liquid gold, that once it gets inside you, it make you fold. That once it gets going and coming back. Cause it's that liquid crack. It's your boy, and we gone.
It won't make you a man again. You don't even smell a cut. New Evan, ayo. From now on, I'm putting my foot down.
The OG non-spitter.
But they ain't saying shit now. I be at them tables, breaking the splits down, getting my residuals, moving like Chris Brown. I keep it original, you know how my shit sound. I'm way more mature, but I ain't put the blick down. They looking like, wow, this nigga say blick now? Not really, motherfucker. It just rhymes with Chris Brown. When I come around, they all gonna skip town like they owe me money or tried to Obi-Wan me. Then I went Anakin. Now they all panicking. You could be perfectly dressed, it won't make you a man again. You don't even smell the kind of shit that you standing in. Jumped out the window, don't know what you landed in. Cock blocking motherfuckers made me switch up the plan again. Okay, guess what? Nigga, I was built for this. I was born for this. They won't admit that they watch me like a porno flick. The rap game is a toilet. I be on some shit. I'm beyond your shit and all that other corny shit. Me in the game on some holy matrimony shit. This my anniversary, some Tony shit. Load the clip, do a spin, grab my dick on some Michael Jackson shit. Nueve.
Your boy Dabrand knows, and now that you know that your boy Dabrand knows, let me get you up to speed on some of this that I know. You heard? So with that being said, we're gonna get y'all in some of this fiery Clinton testimony shakes the Senate. You know they got your boy on the hot seat. They want that news, that info. He's don't be a. My man Wolfman Park, give it up. Wolfman, with that being said, now that you know that your boy the Brando knows, let's get this thing started. We go. Yeah, we got a plethora of things coming up on the menu today. I know your boy, what's his face, man? Charlemagne the Ward.
2-0. So the Clintons should come in, honor the subpoena, and
Pause. With that being said, now that you know that your boy Dabrand knows. Let's get into this.
testify. And you know why, Mr. Chairman? In the pursuit of truth.
You'll have to forgive me if I do not give a slow clap to our colleague across the aisle for his.
And we gone. Don't worry about it, y'all. We on. You know.
His Academy Award-winning appearance just now in front of the committee. But I want to just address some of the things that I heard here today and to talk about why we're here. What I've heard here this morning in front of this committee is exactly what the survivors are asking us for. They are asking us to do our jobs, to make good on the promises that we made them when they came and met with us, and to actually, in good faith, conduct an investigation. Now, I always think it's important to pull back the curtain for the American people about what happens in these committees. And I was not shocked and surprised, but, you know, I think it's important to note that when I stepped out of the committee a few moments ago, the press were huddled on the Republican side of this committee room to take statements from the Republicans. They're not out in the kind of like neutral area. They're standing outside the Republican door so that after this vote is taken, our Republican colleagues can walk out and make a statement to the press. Now, I think that that's important to note for the public here, because this is not about true accountability. Because if this was actually about getting to the bottom of this case and actually holding individuals accountable for the crimes that were committed by Jeffrey Epstein, by Ghislaine Maxwell, by the associates, and the many, many people who are implicated in this case, what would be happening right now in this committee is that Pam Bondi and DOJ officials would be sitting right there on the witness panel answering questions under oath, because they are breaking the law. They are not complying with our subpoena. They are not complying with the Epstein Transparency Act. And on the day, the final deadline, that they were supposed to release their final explanation about why they may have redacted some files, and in fact they have, as has been stated many times, only released less than 1% of the files, Donald Trump used the United States military to invade a foreign country and steal their oil. And while we're sitting here and our colleagues are trying to create a spectacle for the media, every single newspaper in the United States and the world's headline is about how Donald Trump right now is in Europe embarrassing the United States. How he is threatening our NATO allies to invade Greenland. Humiliating the United States. And I have to say, I was home over the weekend for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebrations to honor the life and legacy of Dr. King. And the question that I got over and over again from my constituents is, what is in those files that is so bad that President Trump is invading Venezuela, threatening our NATO allies, and sending thousands of armed paramilitary troops onto our streets to create violence and chaos in American cities? That is what the American people are actually asking us. And so I will be honest, Mr. Chairman, I am deeply troubled that the individuals who are the subject of today's hearing did not appear on their scheduled date. No one is above the law. But I do know, based on the correspondence, that they have been corresponding with you regularly to try to resolve this issue. But I don't believe that's what this hearing is actually about. Because if it was actually about getting justice and about getting the truth, we would have DOJ here. we would be holding Pam Bondi in contempt, and we would be hearing from the survivors themselves. And so I have to agree with my colleagues that I believe that this is part of an extended smokescreen to try to cover things up. And so I do ask my colleagues across the aisle, if you are earnest about getting to the truth and getting to justice, then bring DOJ in here and hold them accountable, because that is actually what the American people want. I yield back.
And lady yields back. Before I recognize Mr. Biggs, I want to point out again for the umpteenth time, Pam Bondi is coming in front of Congress under oath, and there'll be lots of opportunities to ask her questions about the Epstein files.
But Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
She's violated a subpoena from this committee, and she should be held in contempt for that. That's a fact.
Here's the difference. They have been turning over documents. Now, I've said it 100 times. It's not as quick as we would like, but they're turning over documents. And I've been very clear today and in hundreds of interviews.
You can't be serious that 1% is turning over documents. What's the deadline for them? When do you expect the full document?
Well, in our subpoena, there was no deadline. And then we voted for the discharge petition, and there's a deadline. The discharge petition's in judiciary. She's coming in front of judiciary. Now, that is a fact. Don't try to misrepresent. Bill Clinton's not a victim here, and the media is not going to take Republican side on anything.
So let's just be right. I think Pam Bondi.
Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs. It's Mr. Biggs, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would just point out, the previous speaker was talking about peeling back so the public can see what goes on in a committee. I mean, I just came from another committee where we were talking about massive fraud around the country, and in particular in Minnesota. And I'm glad that 2 Democrats could find time out of their busy schedule to even attend that hearing. What a shame. What a shame. So when someone says, what is in the files is so bad, I'll ask this question. What is in the files that's so bad that the Democrats for 4 years, when they had control of this committee, didn't release a single document, didn't call a single witness, didn't make any motion. In fact, for those 4 years, go back and look. Did they ever say anything about Epstein? No, they didn't. But wanting to make a press, wanting to get it on the press, that's why you're making the issue today. Because let's talk about why we need to talk with, do this contempt, is because former President Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton basically strung us along as we were bending over backwards trying to accommodate their schedule. They didn't show up after we finally had to get a subpoena for them. And I have right here, this is just interesting to me. This is a little note written by Mr. Clinton, former President Clinton, to Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. Jeffrey, happy 50th. It's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted as long across all the years of learning and knowing, adventures and no illegible word, and also to have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference, and the solace of friends. He rode on that plane many times. He was apparently close friends with him. Jeffrey Epstein claims that, and I don't know if we should believe anything Epstein says for sure, but I mean, Epstein says that he helped set up and fund the Clinton Foundation, and former President Clinton in his note, I mean, this is what he wants. He doesn't want to come in and testify. He wants to do the same thing that he did in previous times. Just, okay, we're going to send a little note, that ought to do it. He says something to the effect that he spent significant time in the Clinton Foundation after he left the presidency. Well, if Jeffrey Epstein set it up, then there's some reason to ask questions of both he and the former Secretary of State. They were given a subpoena. It was a lawfully issued subpoena by a standing committee. By the way, I happened to be at that subcommittee hearing. I was there when every Democrat voice voted that out. Nobody objected and said they didn't want him to be subpoenaed. But he was subpoenaed, and he didn't show up. So here we are. And with Mr. Chairman, I'll yield time to you if you need it.
I appreciate it. I think that everything that needs to be pointed out, we've pointed out. So I will.
Then I'll yield, sir.
Okay. Chair, any other members seek recognition?
Chairman.
Mr. Mfume.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you and the ranking member, and I particularly want to underscore the ranking member's opening statement, and that was that oversight Democrats want the truth about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes and accountability for everyone involved. He said, and I agree, we want transparency, we want the facts, and above all, we want this committee to use its oversight tools in a serious and responsible way. I would be remiss if I did not thank on behalf of all of us the efforts of Representative Rokana of this committee and Representative Massey. Thank God they stood in the way of things and took the heat to get the discharge petition up and voted on. And I want to also point out something that I think is important, and that is consistencies, Mr. Chairman. The action that the majority has been proposing today departs from this committee's established practices, including its long-time standing acceptance of written testimony and the level of accommodation this committee has traditionally required before proceeding to criminal contempt, not civil, criminal contempt. I'm glad, as the ranking member has stated, that the Clintons have agreed to testimony and to a transcript and to meet. I agree also that that meeting should not be taking place in New York. It sends the wrong reason for anybody that gets something from this committee. They should come to the committee. It's just that plain and simple. But it departs in many instances with the way this committee has moved on. And I say that because we never know this time next year who might hold that gavel and who on either side may want to go after the current president, his sons, his wife, his family, and anybody connected to him as a department head. I'm just pointing out the fact that it's a slippery slope. Now, does Bill Clinton have to defend himself? Absolutely, yes. It is a bit curious, however, why we are going after Mrs. Clinton. I've not seen anything, as the gentleman from Massachusetts said earlier, that suggests that she ought to be a part of this in any way or has done something wrong or is complicit in this matter. And I would hope that there's some consideration, Mr. Chairman, to withdrawing at the very least that particular resolution. It just makes me think that this is a fishing expedition and that we want to dust her up a bit if we get her before this committee. Now, a couple of quick things. We're being asked to move forward holding a former president of the United States, again, not in civil contempt, in criminal contempt of Congress. And I'm going to tell you why it's an extraordinary step. Not that it's unprecedented, it's extraordinary, but it is unprecedented in the fact that we did not do that with Richard Nixon. We did not do that with Donald Trump. There was a subpoena, but there was never an attempt to find them in criminal contempt of the Congress or of this committee. It's an extraordinary remedy that's usually reserved for situations where a witness has clearly and willfully defied Congress after extraordinary processes have been exhausted. The majority has not demonstrated that standard so far. I do want to say also that we're in a situation where I don't think that anybody on the Republican or on the Democratic side of this committee is trying to defend former President Clinton. They're trying to find a way to make sure that we're consistent. So the reason we keep hearing the need to have Pam Bondi before this committee is that we're getting ready to bring criminal contempt charges before there's been an investigation. Usually that happens after the investigation. And the notion that somebody is going to come before this committee, Mrs. Maxwell, and take the fifth, I don't care. She's already a convicted criminal. She can't take the fifth. But we can do the actions we ought to be about, and that is to make sure that both of them are before this committee, and then to make sure also, or to suggest, it's up to you and the ranking member, that that meeting takes place and those transcripts are made available, and that Mr. Clinton comes before the committee with counsel so that we then are in a position to move forward. We're taking a big jump here without doing some of the things that we normally do. Now, I'm glad that Ms. Tlaib brought up the matter of victims. She's not here right now, but all of us sat in that room with those victims. It was gut-wrenching, and all of us made a commitment that we would prove that this institution could and would do the right thing. So we're challenged here, Mr. Chairman, and I hope that you and the ranking member can give us a way to proceed here that both of the concerns on both sides are addressed. But if we just move straight as we're going now without an investigation, it begs the question, what happens when the shoe is on the other foot? I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Simons next. Before I recognize her, I just want to add, with respect to the Hillary Clinton subpoena, you all voted for that. This committee voted for that in a bipartisan manner. Her name was on that list. And with respect to Pam Bondi, again, she's testifying in front of Congress in less than 2 weeks. Chair recognizes Ms. Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick comment, and I have a friendly question for my colleague, Ms. Luna. And I'll say a friendly question. I've worked with victims for decades. So few opportunities present themselves for victims to sit face to face with folks who hold power, to beg and plead that everyone who had anything to do with their harm be held to account. So few opportunities. I have been a victim advocate where brilliant young women who have been trafficked across this country have stood in courtrooms and were demanded to testify against their traffickers, and they did with such power and grace in fear that their lives may be taken because of that braveness. And a number of those young women that I witnessed take all that they had to confront their demons, they were murdered because they took a stand. And so when we did stand in front and sit in front of those victims and they gave us their all, I hope that this is not the only opportunity, Mr. Chair, to speak on their behalf. From our president to everyone in those files, forget all the political games. If these women who are connected with the largest sex trafficking ring in modern day American history cannot get justice, what about the girls in every single state? I mean, it is what it is. That being said, Ms. Luna, you talked briefly about a proposal.
She's not in.
She's out.
That's bold.
There was a proposal put on the table to rethink how we might have a conversation about the Clintons or President Clinton coming in and having a conversation with this body. And I guess that time has passed, but I know that I would love to hear from the former president of the United States. I would love to hear from the Attorney General. I would love to hear from the current president of these United States. The victims deserve to be heard. The victims deserve for the files to be released in their entirety. And the victims deserve for us to get to the bottom of this matter. I yield back. Well, I actually would like to yield my time to the ranking member.
Actually, I'm okay right now on time. I might come back around, but back to Mr. Comer and the Republicans. Thank you, Ms. Simon.
Okay. Do any other members seek recognition? Seeing none, we are going to, there's an amendment at the desk. Well, let's Ms. Lee, what purpose do you seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk distribute the amendment to all members? The clerk will designate the amendment.
An amendment to the amendment in nature of a substitute to the William J. Clinton contempt report as offered by Ms. Lee of Pennsylvania.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that even listening to this debate throughout our hearing today, our markup today, I think it's really clear that at the heart of this effort to release the Epstein files are very real human beings who have experienced unimaginable harm. They have been repeatedly victimized by the indifference of the U.S. government and the injustice that they face. They deserve peace and healing and justice. When my motion to subpoena the Epstein files passed, this committee resolved to get that justice for those survivors. And I thank Chairman Comer for pushing this effort forward by issuing additional subpoenas for the Epstein estate and the banks. And we know that without the full files from the DOJ, that is just not enough. That's why I'm introducing this amendment, which holds Attorney General Pam Bondi in civil contempt for failing to comply with the August 5th subpoena, and I urge my colleagues to support it. And we believe that we should start with civil contempt because we are serious about this investigation. We want these files and we want to hear from them. And we must start there. The Department of Justice needs to be the priority. We can move to non-compliance by anyone else, including Ghislaine Maxwell, after we have received those files. It has been 5 months, and we're still missing over 5 million pages of documents purportedly. The Department of Justice has only released 1% of those files. They have stonewalled this committee since August, and they have failed to provide even the most basic updates. How is that not an insult, both to the authority of this committee and the survivors? Without the full files, how can we know who might have legitimate knowledge or who might be culpable? We wouldn't have to speculate on the Clintons or anyone else's involvement if we had all of those files. And to be clear, I'm certainly not opposed to the President and Secretary Clinton being held accountable for violating the subpoena. But the fact that this effort to hold the Clintons in contempt was fast-tracked and is happening before any action against the Justice Department is just evidence that the Republicans on this committee are not taking this investigation seriously. It is an unequal application of law. And again, it is a bit ironic that these contempt resolutions empower the Justice Department to imprison possibly 2 people for defying the exact same subpoena that they themselves are defying. If this committee wants to be taken seriously, we would be addressing all the bad actors in this investigation, not cherry picking them for political points. The Justice Department needs to be held accountable for their non-compliance and lack of transparency. They have been selectively producing information, shielding powerful people, and obstructing any efforts for oversight. And if we don't hold them accountable, Mr. Chair, we are too. Just this past Friday, Attorney General Bondi asked a New York federal judge to deny an appointment of a special master to monitor the release of the Epstein files. They don't want a neutral third party making sure they follow the law. I think all of us should be questioning what the Justice Department is doing that they don't want the American people to see. We can't just take them at their word that they'll eventually get around to releasing the files. Quite frankly, they have put up the same, if not far less of an action as the Clintons have. What little information they've released so far has either already been made public or has been a mess of just sketchy redactions. A group of survivors sent a letter to the Justice Department's Inspector General complaining that the redactions had been, quote, selective. They pointed out that multiple times the names of alleged abusers appeared to be redacted, yet some survivors' names and identifying information were released. To be clear, the subpoena I moved to secure does not allow for redactions unless it would protect the identity of a survivor or contains child sex abuse materials. They have had plenty of time to work with this committee to protect survivors' identities. This is bigger than one case. It's about rich and powerful people being protected by each other and institutions. It's about a system that has enabled Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and whoever their co-conspirators are to buy favors and silence from our government. This effort is the one time we could get some real accountability and reclaim the power of this system. Republicans, don't drop the ball by allowing Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice to play us for fools. Mr. Chair, you are setting a precedent that non-compliance with this committee will result in immediate contempt proceedings. So I challenge you and my Republican colleagues to put your money where your mouth is and pass this amendment and holding Pam Bondi in contempt. I yield back.
Gentle yields back. I'll recognize myself just for amendment. Look, I oppose this amendment, and I hope everyone on the committee opposes this. That's because Attorney General Bondi and the Department of Justice, they have released documents. Again, not at the speed or pace that any of us want, but they are complying with our subpoena. That is a fact. I oppose your amendment, Ms. Lee, because you amend the criminal to civil. And I think that most of what I'm hearing from my colleagues on the other side of the aisles, everyone wants to hear from the Clintons. They've had an opportunity for 5 months. They will have another opportunity between today's vote and the floor to come in and answer questions. Pam Bondi is coming in front of Congress in less than 2 weeks to answer questions. Your colleague, Ms. Crockett, I don't want to speak for Ms. Crockett, but I'm pretty confident Ms. Crockett's going to grill Pam Bondi, right? You agree with me? I would have won that bet. Well, we'll see. I think that's a good. She may. I hope she does. So I oppose this. Now, Chair recognizes Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to just start by saying I strongly support the amendment proposed by Congresswoman Lee. The House majority keeps saying that they believe that no one is above the law. Oversight Democrats certainly believe that, but the Attorney General is violating it with impunity in support of a White House cover-up every single day. We want accountability for her failure to comply with our subpoena for the full Epstein files that's been in place since the summer. She fails to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. She fails to comply with the subpoena put in place by Representative Lee and the committee. This is clearly a White House-directed cover-up. Now, over a month after the deadline, only 1% of these files have been released. No explanation has been given for illegal redactions, again in violation of the law. Epstein survivors have reported that their names have appeared in parts of the document that were not redacted. And every day, she continues to withhold files and conceals the truth. She continues to give Ghislaine Maxwell special treatment by moving her to a less secure prison that we all are aware, which is completely shameful. Now, Chairman Comer, you claim, of course, that the Attorney General was complying with our subpoena. I mean, that is absolutely false. 1% of the documents since a subpoena in place during the summer is not complying with our subpoena. Now, on August 5th, 2025, this committee issued that subpoena, compelling her to produce documents and communications. That subpoena unambiguously required the Attorney General to do that no later than August 19th of 2025. August 19th, not December, August 19th of 2025. On August 22nd, the DOJ made a single production of approximately 33,000 pages to this committee. All of those documents, however, were already public. The DOJ has made no additional production to the committee pursuant to the subpoena. The DOJ has failed to provide specific information in response to repeated requests from Democratic oversight staff as to why the DOJ's timetable continues to move and why it's not fulfilled its production or the law. Now, in response to letters from our committee on November 25th, the DOJ transmitted a single letter in response to the committee's inquiries. They claimed that the DOJ was working to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which now, of course, we know they actually weren't doing because we actually haven't received very much. The letter made no reference to the committee's subpoena, no reference to DOJ's plan for compliance. The corrupt failure to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act is not just a crime, it also shows that the Attorney General has made no attempt to actually comply with our subpoena. Now, oversight Republicans might be happy to give President Trump and Pam Bondi a free pass to break the law, but this committee shouldn't do so. This amendment will allow us to go to court to force Pam Bondi to comply with our subpoena and to finally bring the Epstein files to light. I urge adoption, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Any other members seek recognition? Who's next on your side? Lynch, Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look,
as the ranking member pointed out, we've got about 1% of the documents. I take exception to the declaration by the chairman that Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice is actually producing documents, is cooperating. So we've got the 30,000 documents that they sent us in August. It was a dump, and it was largely already made public. It wasn't prepared. I'll give you a comparison. We've got a handful of attorneys that work for the estate of Jeffrey Epstein, and they have given us more in the same amount of time than the Department of Justice has given. I want to point out that there are 100,000 employees at the Department of Justice. And I know very recently, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York has now put a considerable number of people on the case redacting documents. But that was 6 months after he started to do that. Clayton started to do that 6 months after we had originally requested the documents. So this is a stall tactic. They haven't given us any of the documents. Remember, back in February of 2025, Pam Bondi said publicly that she had a client list of the perpetrators in the client list was sitting on her desk right now to review. That was back in February of 2025. She went on later on in March 3rd, 2025. She told Sean Hannity that a truckload of evidence had arrived, that FBI Director Kash Patel is going to get me and himself really a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld, close quote. However, in July 2025, Bondi and the FBI released an unsigned memorandum concluding that the review found no evidence. No evidence that Epstein had a client list or that he blackmailed prominent associates. And this is obviously contradicting her earlier public statements and faced significant backlash. This is clearly obstruction of justice on the part of Pam Bondi. We have every bit of reason to infer that she has no intention at all of producing these documents. She has made a mockery out of this whole process, including allowing witness tampering and having Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted of trafficking in this instance, removed from one jail to a much more comfortable position. Why is that not witness tampering? We should ask her questions about that. And the idea that some other committee is going to do this is an abdication of our responsibility on this committee, I believe. We should not look. We are the ones that we had the victims sit down in front of us and tearfully ask for justice from this committee, and we promised that. We promised that we would do everything we possibly. We didn't say, well, we'll check with the Judiciary Committee and we'll let them do the work. We said we would take on this responsibility, which is ours, Mr. Chairman. This is the rightful jurisdiction for this case, and we should demand people with evidence to produce that evidence so that we can proceed in our work. We haven't done that thus far. We've let Pam Bondi distort and obstruct the justice that's due to these victims. It's shameful. It really is. And I want to hear from everyone who has a connection to this. I want to hear from every single witness that might be able to provide evidence to this committee. And I think Pam Bondi, with the millions and millions and millions of documents, is at the top of that list. And she has thwarted justice long enough. She is a lapdog to the president. She is trying to protect the president, who is all over this case. And I'm hopeful that eventually he'll be a witness before this committee at some point. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Before I recognize Scott Perry, if I may, this committee has done everything that the victims asked that day in that hearing. They asked that we subpoena the estate. We had no idea what was in that estate documents. Could have been all Republicans. Had no idea. Could have been billionaires. Could have been donors to the Republican Party. Could have been donors to the Democrat Party. Had no idea. Without hesitation, I signed that subpoena for the estate. And then with respect to your criticism of Bondi, I don't disagree with anything you said in your criticism of the current Attorney General. And I think she's going to have to answer those questions in front of Congress, in front of the American people in 2 weeks. And I'm confident she's going to be asked those questions, and I expect to hear answers from the criticism that you leveled against her. No one's defending her. Again, we expect to get the documents. They have produced some. We aren't satisfied with the pace, and she's going to be in front of Congress in 2 weeks to answer that exact criticism. Chair recognizes Mr. Perry from Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to address the unjustified and cowardly claims made against me by members of this committee after I left, and maybe they were afraid to face me while I was here, but I'm here now and I'm going to face you. Just to be clear, if you have this job, you should know that any subpoena from another Congress is invalid in the next Congress. It dies with the last Congress. That's minimum information that you should know if you're going to serve in Congress. So just let me inform you of that if you didn't know that. Regarding the so-called subpoena, it is unjust and it is immoral to get a group of your friends together who have a predetermined outcome, put them together in a room, and then use the power of the federal government to prevail on your political enemies. The subpoena that was served to me or my counsel was not valid because there was no valid committee serving it. I did not violate any law, and I reject the claims or the averance that I did. The Democrat Party sought to, by use of the awesome and just the grand power of the federal government, to destroy my reputation as a person who was not charged with anything, was not accused of anything, was not the target of investigation. You wish to dirty me up and bankrupt me so you can get rid of me. It is outrageous, and I have not mentioned that at all, but since you brought it up, I felt it was appropriate at this time to clear my good name. And as the years have gone by, more information has come out to prove what I just said was absolutely accurate. What happened during that period of time when you were in the majority was you set up a star chamber with predetermined outcomes and then sought to destroy in any way possible your political enemies by fashioning lies and then repeating them over and over again, which you do to this day, which you do to this moment. Now, when I spoke earlier, I didn't mention the subpoena. I mentioned the truth, and that's what this committee should be all about, wherever it comes from and whoever it touches. And I believe that to my soul, which is why I have been on this bandwagon long before you have ever been on it, and much more than you have ever done. Much more than you have ever done, legitimately and sincerely. So I thank the chairman for allowing me this opportunity to set the record straight. And hopefully, that won't happen in the future. Now, regarding the Clintons, as you know, I offered the amendment, the resolution, to bring everybody in, attorneys general from both sides of the aisle. But with the Clintons in particular, because of their particular knowledge of Mr. Jeffrey Epstein and his exploits with underage women. It is horrific. As a father of two young daughters, I would just say that the perpetrators of whatever happened ought to be thankful that their fathers don't know about it. But I sure hope that they do know soon. And I sure hope that there is justice for all the victims and that we don't seek to destroy the lives of those uninvolved for political purposes, which is what, quite honestly, this whole theater, this whole charade has been about. This should have been easy. Is Mr. Clinton an American citizen? We appreciate that he was the president, but according to his wife, he's not above the law, and neither is she. This is a lawful subpoena with plenty of time. The committee has been, and the chairman has been more than generous trying to work it out. But it's pretty obvious to anybody with eyes in their head that the Clintons feel like they're above the law and they're going to get special treatment, as Secretary Clinton did the last time she was subpoenaed. I'll remind everybody that she worked out a deal to come in with her so-called attorney, but was her aide behind closed doors on a Saturday without any transcript. That's where we're headed. I'll yield the balance of my time to the gentlelady from Colorado if she wants it.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I just think that all of this is rich. I mean, we have every Democrat here just with their typical talking points, claiming they want to hold the Clintons accountable and hear from them. So I think it's time we move on and get to the actual point of this. We had the Clintons defy a lawful subpoena, and that is what we are here to discuss. But Democrats want to bring up anything but that. And if this continues, I'm going to call the question. So continue with your Clintons and how you are going to protect them, or I'm going to call the question, we're going to have the vote and end all of this nonsense rhetoric that's going on. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair recognizes Ms. Stansberry's next on the list, I think. No? Okay. Frost, who's next? I just go by what the ranking member wants. So who's next?
Mr. Frost.
Frost from Florida.
I just want to speak in support of this amendment that has been put forth by Representative Lee. Look, at the end of the day, the United States Congress voted damn near unanimously. One member of Congress voted against releasing the Epstein files, happens to be a Republican on this committee, but damn near unanimously, we said we want the files. Months before that, in the subcommittee, in a subcommittee on this committee, we said we issued a subpoena for the files as well. They have failed to comply with the law, not just on one law that we passed, but also on a lawful subpoena that this committee put forth. And so I just want to speak in support of Representative Lee's motion here, an amendment here, because we have to go at this everywhere. We want to hear from everyone. We want to hear from former president. We want to hear from anyone who's implicated. We want to hear from anyone who has information that might help us get justice for the victims. But it is obvious that my Republican colleagues are doing anything they can to play defense for the administration. 1% of documents is unacceptable. 1% of documents is unacceptable when you've had months and months and months since June or July of last year to produce these documents when we sent a lawful subpoena to the Department of Justice. 1% of documents is unacceptable for a bill passed by the United States Congress that they are in violation of. They're breaking the law right now as we speak. And all we're asking for is accountability here for everyone. And so this amendment, I think, is very simple. I know the chairman keeps bringing up the fact that Pam Bondi is going to come to the Judiciary Committee. The Judiciary Committee is not the committee that is leading the investigation on this. We are the Oversight Committee. And so she can go over to the Judiciary Committee all she wants, like she, by the way, is supposed to, like every other attorney general has in the history of this country. He shows up before the Judiciary Committee at least once a year or once in Congress to talk about a lot of different business. But we have a very specific thing we need to talk with her about. And it is talking with her about the fact that she is breaking the law and that the administration is obviously slow rolling, putting forth the Epstein files. And I do not buy this thing that, oh, well, they're taking their time to redact it and this and that. We all know that's a load of BS. We all know that that is a talking point that perhaps the administration gave some of my colleagues that they are just repeating over and over and over again. But when you have the entire Department of Justice or a lot of people working on this, you should be able to produce documents in a much faster way. And the law was clear. And by the way, it's the law that we all voted on. So if you thought that the timetable was unfair, you should have voted no. But you voted yes. We all voted yes, except one. And so I think this is a very sensible amendment that everyone should vote yes on, because it is important that we have accountability across the board, no matter who you are. I will yield. You want my time, ranking member? I'll yield the balance of my time to the ranking member.
Thank you. Thank you again, Mr. Frost. Just to conclude, we obviously have and support Representative Lee's amendment. We think it's important. It's important to get Pam Bondi to actually produce the files. And it's certainly important to move this debate forward. And so I just, again, want to reiterate and reinforce our support as we wrap up this debate on this amendment. And so thank you, Mr. Coomer.
Thank you. We have one more speaking request on our side. That's Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And turns out, apparently, I was mentioned as well. When I was conducting that hearing that on Minnesota fraud and other fraud that the Democrats were so interested in that only 2 of them bothered to show up. That's interesting. Well, so let's talk about the illicit subpoenas, because I think some of my colleagues may not remember this, but the resolution that we all passed, that passed out of here to install the J6 committee, gave to then Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy specific authority to name the members from the Republican side that would sit on the J6 committee. So he named them. But Speaker Pelosi didn't like those guys. So she said, no, they can't be on the committee. So she booted them and replaced them with people that she felt would be more amenable to accomplish the desired political outcome that she wanted the J6 committee to have. And that was, so she put 2 individuals, you will remember Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger on there, having removed and no other Republicans were on there. And so not only did she violate the resolution, but the resolution all called for a certain number to be on there, and there were not that number. So the committee itself was illicit. It was not a standing committee like this is, where you have jurisdictional authorities. That committee, by that point, was no longer a committee. It was an effort to railroad people, including myself. And things have been said about me repeatedly that have been debunked. Everything's been debunked that was said about me. But here we have it today, and Mr. Perry was right. This was designed to go after certain specific people. I'm still not quite sure why I was one, but I was one. And bringing it up today is actually kind of an abhorrent tactic, because it was an illicit committee, didn't have authority to issue an illicit subpoena, whereas this committee issued a legitimate subpoena. Not only did it provide the subpoena, but it actually worked for months trying to get the Clintons and accommodate their schedule, including continuing this at least once so the Clintons would find it more convenient to come and respond to the deposition. Leaving all other deflection aside, if you really want the Clintons to come in and answer these questions, then this would be the appropriate time to vote to hold them in contempt. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back to you.
Gentleman yields back. The question is now on the amendment offered by Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay.
If I might,
somebody, go ahead.
So that we know exactly what we're doing here, because this has gone way off of where we started with Ms. Lee's amendment. So that members of the committee know, this resolves itself that the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform shall initiate judicial proceedings in any federal court of competent jurisdiction on behalf of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform to seek declaratory judgments affirming the duty of Patricia or Pamela J. Bondi, Attorney General of the United States, to comply with the subpoena duly issued to her by the chairman of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform as a part of investigating and the investigation into federal government's enforcement of sex trafficking law generally, and specifically its handling of the investigation and prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. How we vote on this will be very telling. I support this amendment. I would urge other members of the committee to do so also, if we are serious about equal practice and holding everyone accountable. I yield back, sir.
Gentleman yields back. The question is now on the amendment offered by Ms. Lee from Pennsylvania. All those in favor of the Lee amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not.
Recorded vote, please, sir.
A recorded vote is ordered as previously announced. Further proceedings on the question will be postponed. For what?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will distribute the amendment to all members. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to the William J. Clinton contempt report is offered by Mr. Min of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I reserve a point of order. The gentleman from California is recognized for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Chair Comer, I motion to amend your amendment in the nature of a substitute to authorize the House Oversight Committee to do 3 things. First, pursue federal court action to enforce a subpoena against former President Bill Clinton related to the sex trafficking investigation. 2, require the committee to report back any resulting litigation. And 3, direct the House General Counsel to represent the committee with the Speaker's approval. Now, I have, as mentioned previously, spent my career trying to enforce the rule of law. I started as an SEC enforcement attorney, went on to become a law professor. I very strongly believe in the rule of law. But the rule of law is not just about not having anyone above the law. It is also about not targeting people simply because you don't like them, or because they're in a different political party, or because they've done things you don't particularly care for. Going after an individual uniquely because of how they're positioned is also a gross violation of our powers and of the rule of law. And if you look at the precedent of how Congress has operated, we have 3 inherent powers when it comes to contempt. Inherent contempt, civil enforcement, and criminal contempt. Now, since we initiated criminal contempt back in the 1930s, we have rarely, if ever, used criminal contempt as a charge, and we have almost never leapt from civil enforcement to criminal contempt. The decision here to go from civil enforcement and to ignore that step, jumping to criminal contempt, is, in my view, a gross imposition, a gross abuse of power on our part. It is also counterproductive because if we launch criminal contempt proceedings, I think my colleague Mr. Biggs pointed out that we want the Clintons to testify. If we launch criminal contempt proceedings, we will not hear from the Clintons. That is a fact. They will be tied up in court. We have no guarantee that they will ever testify before this committee. Civil enforcement will achieve the goal we want of getting the Clintons out here before this committee. Now, I just think this is problematic. We talked earlier, Mr. Comer, and I still have not heard you to this point in time say anything about the Clintons defying the subpoena. I've heard you say obfuscate, delay, drag their feet. We've had 5 months. But at no point in time did they say we're not complying with the subpoena. And to me, civil enforcement is an appropriate intermediate step. It makes sense because it allows a court to step in, secure compliance with the committee's subpoena in a nonpartisan, orderly way that follows the rule of law. Court would be empowered to impose fines and actual imprisonment if the individual or entity refuses to comply with us. If we break from precedent, this is going to start potentially a chain reaction of partisan warfare with criminal charges. That is not a road I believe we want to go down in this committee or in this Congress. I think civil contempt will achieve our goals, and it will do so in a way that is consistent with the rule of law. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. I'll recognize myself for a few minutes. The committee's consulted with the House Office of General Counsel as well as committee counsel, who have expressed significant concern with shifting from criminal contempt to civil contempt because it would likely result in extended litigation that would go beyond this term. As Mr. Perry said, a subpoena is only good for a congressional term. He is already 5 months past his subpoena. The Clintons have lawyered up. There's no question in my mind that if we do this, they will ride this out and hope that the House flips and that you all are in control and you all just let them get by without answering any questions, which I think is terrible. So I cannot support this amendment. I ask my colleagues to oppose this amendment. Chair recognizes ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to support the amend motion. I just want to reiterate something I think all oversight Dems have said today, is that we all want to hear from President Clinton. We all want questions answered from President Clinton. I don't think one member of this committee has stated anything differently. And this amendment is a way for us to secure compliance without immediately moving to criminal contempt while they have been trying to negotiate answering our questions. We can continue to let the legal process play out. Both the integrity of our investigation as a whole is critical as we move forward. This is an opportunity for us to get our questions answered from President Clinton. We will do that without empowering a Department of Justice that, quite frankly, has been corrupt and untrustworthy for many, many months. We should continue to negotiate and work through an established process. Clearly, there's interest to negotiate from the Clinton side. Let's hear from President Clinton. Let's support this motion. I yield back.
If I may, and with all due respect, if you want to hear from President Clinton, have him come in for the deposition. They've had 5 months to do that. For whatever reason, you've been unsuccessful. There's 2 more weeks before this will be voted on for the full House. We will hear from Bondi in between, and we will go from there. We expect to hear from Bill Clinton. He's not above the law. Mr. Walker-Charles, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points. One, it seems to me like we made some progress in the negotiation to talk to President Clinton here today. You have acknowledged you and your team are no longer going to demand to be able to ask questions not related to Epstein. The Clintons have agreed to transcription of that conversation. So you could go to New York and talk to President Clinton on the date that you all set. That's ready to go. We've heard from Ms. Luna that it would be a bad look for you and the ranking member to have to drive to New York. They got airports there. You all could take a flight and go to New York and have the conversation. That would move our investigation forward. I'm supporting Mr. Menn's amendment in the nature of a substitute, and you know, I'll share. I was a staff member for a member of this committee for more than a decade throughout the Obama administration, multiple chairmen of the committee, and time after time after time, Republicans who chaired the committee, Democrats who chaired the committee, negotiated with members of the administration or private individuals who they wanted to have come before the committee, negotiated the terms. Not once did I see this kind of leap to criminal contempt. It is not consistent with the way that this committee has operated. It is not necessary. Mr. Menn's amendment, or you and the ranking member going to New York and having the transcribed under oath conversation with President Clinton would move our investigation forward. Either of those are better options than pursuing criminal contempt, which would not get us a conversation with President Clinton, would not move our investigation forward, and would not get the survivors the transparency that they're demanding. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may, Mr. Walker, to reply to that, one reason that your counteroffers today don't hold a lot of weight with me is the fact that we never demanded to their attorneys that we ask questions outside the realm of the Epstein investigation. That was never a thing. They have just made that up. So their dishonesty, you know, we've already admitted one lie when they said this wasn't a lawful subpoena. That was in the letter from Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton to me. They said this is not a lawful subpoena. It is a lawful subpoena. Does anybody disagree with that? It is a lawful subpoena. So number two, we've never asked to ask questions outside of this. And I'll give you an example. When we were negotiating with Hunter Biden's attorneys, or judiciary was negotiating, we agreed when Hunter Biden came in to talk about the Biden influence peddling and the money that they were receiving from foreign countries, we wouldn't ask about the stuff on the laptop. We wouldn't ask about the stuff in the suspicious activity reports about human trafficking and other things with Hunter Biden. We only asked about the influence peddling, which was what the investigation was. And it's been the same with the Clintons. So if their attorneys are trying to spin out with the media that we wanted to talk about Monica Lewinsky or anything else, that is not true. All we want to talk about is Epstein. That has always been the deal. And for them to say otherwise is a complete 100% lie by the Clinton attorneys.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Chairman, and I'm glad that the Clintons have agreed to have the conversation transcribed. So it seems to me that the only remaining barrier of the barriers you have identified is you don't want to go to New York. And from my view, this investigation
I'm going to New York
is important
this weekend.
enough.
That's not a barrier.
Go to the moon. Let's have the conversation. You can do it.
Chair recognizes who's next. Ms. Stansbury.
Thank you. Honestly, I just want to get some clarification because I've heard so many different things here this morning. So, Mr. Chairman, you just said you're willing to go to New York. In fact, you're going to New York this weekend. Is that correct?
The committee has released the emails, so
No,
you
I'm
can
just asking
see
you,
the communication
I'm not
between
trying
the
to
staff.
be difficult. I really just want to understand. Are you willing to go to New York to conduct this interview and deposition?
With the committee, with the staff, it's not going to just be. We have negotiated this for 5 months, Ms. Stansbury.
No, I'm just asking simple
And you're all
questions.
are
the
thinking,
question,
and they've had 5 months.
Is the answer a yes? It sounds like it's a yes. My other question for you is that, so it's my understanding that you guys have received both correspondence by phone, email, and from a written letter from the attorneys from the Clintons offering to do this on the record with you, with the staff, with the attorneys. Is that correct?
I wasn't paying attention to your question.
Okay, we're here pursuant to a motion you brought for contempt, and the claim is that you have made reasonable accommodations and that they have not been responsive. But they have transmitted correspondence to all of the members of the committee, including yourself and all of the members, basically including a letter from their attorneys stating that they have offered by phone, that they have offered by email, and they have offered in a written letter from both themselves and the attorneys to meet with you on the record with the staff to give sworn statements. Is that correct?
We have
Yes,
negotiated for
yes
5
or
months.
no?
You all
Have they?
are trying to create a false narrative. You've had 5 months. You
asking-
should have gotten to the Clintons
am
before the
asking-
contempt vote.
All I'm asking you is if that's true.
And if they weren't losing public opinion, Ms. Stansbury, they would be defying
Mr.
this now. That's the
Chairman-
only reason there's negotiations at the last
But
minute.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just asking
They don't get
if
to make
those
the
are
rules.
facts.
We make the rules. The chairman of the committee, we make the rules.
But Mr. Chairman, is that the fact? That's all I'm asking. Is that factual? Just to be clear for the public, his staff are advising the chairman to not answer that question. Okay.
No, the staff said they couldn't understand what the hell you were saying because you've blabbered for 3 minutes. But go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me say it again. Is it true that the Clintons and their attorneys have had multiple conversations with you via phone, via email, and via written correspondence offering to give sworn statements on the record to you and the staff? Just a yes or no.
The Clintons said that we could take notes, Mr. Garcia and I. The committee would like to ask questions as well.
Are you not in receipt of a letter postmarked from their attorneys yesterday saying that they would give sworn statements under oath?
Sworn, that's not a record.
You're not in possession of the letter that their attorneys sent yesterday to the entire committee.
What their letter is stating isn't what you're stating.
Okay, well, I'm not going to read the letter. We'll make sure it's available to the public.
Although I'm sure
But
they'll
in
make
any
sure
case-
anything's available to the public. The problem is they've not been truthful. And
But Mr. Chairman, the legal standard for contempt is non-cooperation. And so my question to you is, are you making reasonable accommodations? Are you cooperating? Are you in correspondence with them? And this is in direct relation to the motion that was made now for an amendment that essentially would use our civil compliance code in order to get full compliance from the committee. And you're saying you're opposed to it because they haven't complied. But I have not heard you lay out the case for compliance. So why would you oppose civil compliance?
Ms. Stansbury, we've been negotiating for 5 months. In the meantime, every other
But that's
person
not
has
the legal
complied with the
standard
subpoena
for
that
the
we've
court.
dealt
That's
with.
not the legal standard for the court, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Well, I see we have a lot of armchair lawyers here. I am not one, but Mr. Min, I do support your amendment, and I think that while the chairman refused to answer questions on the record, I think we established that there has been ongoing correspondence and that it does not meet the standard.
Ms. Simons recognized.
I would like to yield my time to the ranking member.
Thank you. I just want to clarify two things. The first is in the comments, I know, Mr. Chairman, you had just discussed about not going beyond the scope of the Epstein investigation with questions. To be clear, though, during the Bill Barr, that you were not interested in, during the Bill Barr deposition, you did go beyond the scope of the Epstein questions. You asked questions about Russia and a bunch of other things. And so that has been that testimony was public. That has been a pattern that has been in the public realm. And so the reason the Clintons have pushed back on that is because you actually have gone beyond the scope of the Epstein investigation in depositions on this investigation with folks you have subpoenaed. I just want to be clear about that, because you just mentioned that right now in your comments. And the second thing I want to say, just to Ms. Stansbury's point, to reiterate, is regardless of when it was done, it's false to say that the Clintons haven't agreed to a transcript of the deposition. They have agreed to a transcript. They've done it and they've reiterated that position in an email that they sent today. It's a position they've made before.
Today.
To position that, sir, I mean, obviously, to position that they've made before to your team. It's a position that they have made a few days ago. They've publicly said it in the press. In fact, it was covered, I think, today or yesterday in an article in the New York Times. And they again reiterated it during this testimony when you said that they've not agreed to. They've clarified their position. They are willing for it to be transcribed. Just want to clarify that.
Chair recognizes. Who's next?
I still have time.
Okay.
If that's okay, Chair, I would like to use the remainder of my time and yield it to Representative Min.
Thank you, Rep. Simon. I just want to add a couple points here. First, I just want to note something that I think has been a little bit conflated today. This vote today on the contempt proceeding is not about whether Bill and Hillary Clinton were involved with the Epstein sex trafficking ring. If either or both of them were involved, they deserve to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. The survivors deserve justice, but the vote that we are about to take later today is about whether the Clintons' actions in negotiating through their lawyers on the particulars of how, when, and where they might appear before this committee, whether that constitutes a willful defiance, and that is the legal standard, a willful default of the subpoena issued to them. And again, I want to point out that Chair Comer has repeatedly talked about negotiating for 5 months, delaying and trying to run out the clock. I do not believe that that is willful defiance of the subpoena. That's not just my opinion. It's the opinion of every serious lawyer in this space that I've talked to that actually knows this area of the law. I think we are going far afield here and going straight to criminal contempt. I would also just point out and rebut what the chair said about criminal contempt leading to the Clintons testifying here. If we issue criminal contempt proceedings, I don't know if you've followed how courts work. A civil enforcement of a subpoena can take place very quickly. Criminal trials will take a very long time, months, if not years. That will definitely run out the clock. We will never hear from the Clintons before this committee. And so I would urge you all to consider this amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute, because it will actually allow us to hear from the Clintons, maybe get the answers we want from them. And particularly since, Chair Comer, you've repeatedly said there is no basis in your mind. The committee is not accusing them of any wrongdoing. We're just simply seeking answers. If we want answers, if we want more information to get to the bottom of what happened with Epstein and this horrific child sex trafficking ring, we should be looking to civil contempt, civil enforcement, because that will actually get them before us, not criminal. With that, I yield back to Chair Rep. Simon.
I would like to yield my time to Ms. Stansbury. Ms. Stansbury says no. I would like to yield my time to the ranking member.
I think we've made our case. I think that we support the Min amendment. It's the right the right way to go, and civil contempt is the right next action if we're going to go in this route. Thank you.
I'd like to yield my time back to the chair. Thank you.
Chair yields back. We did call votes, but Mr. Biggs wants to be recognized, and I think we're going to vote on the Min amendment.
Yeah, I'll be pretty quick. So when you take into the correct legal standard, and you talk about willful and defiance, so you have a culpable mental state and you have the act. Mm-hmm. The act took place here when they didn't show up. That's the defiance. They didn't show up. Now the question is, was it willful? Well, the other piece of evidence you have that it was willful is they sent a little note saying, this is all we're going to say. This is what happened here. And that's the evidence. It was willful. They knew about the subpoena because they negotiated with you. You even moved the time for them. They chose not to come. When you reissued the date, you gave them the date that ostensibly was going to be more convenient. They continued to say they were going to come, and then at the last minute they slipped a note in saying, this is what I'm going to say. I'm not saying anything more. That's the culpable mental state. You've got willful defiance. Thus, contempt is appropriate. And I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Very good. The question is now on the Min amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. A recorded vote is ordered. As previously announced, further proceedings on the question will be postponed. Pursuant to the previous order, the chair declares the committee in recess, subject to the call of the chair. We will plan to convene immediately after the first vote series. With that, the committee stands in recess. privately for 2 hours. Miss Lee was there, and Miss Crockett, and more than half the committee. They were demanding that we subpoena the estate, and we did. We got every document from the estate. There were people said, "Oh, there are going to be a lot of questions answered. There'll be names," and all. We've subpoenaed every document, every picture, everything from the estate. We never held back. We've been serious. We've all supported the full release of the documents. As I've stated many times publicly, we wish the process was going quicker. That's a lot of documents, a lot of redactions, a lot of eyes have to be put on this. So the Department of Justice is complying. Now, with respect to Maxwell and the Clintons are not treated differently. Maxwell was always, she was willing to appear, but made very clear she would take the Fifth Amendment. The Clintons refused to appear. The Clintons refused to appear. And one of the proposals that Clinton made was, if we would let Hillary Clinton off, then Mr. Garcia and I could travel to Mr. Clinton's house and bring one staffer and take notes, but no transcript. That's not even a thing, and you all know that. The media, I'm sure, would require a transcript. There's no real investigation without a transcript. So, what few counter proposals the Clintons' massive legal team has made aren't acceptable, and I don't think anyone is going to stand up here and willing to publicly argue that they were. So does any other member seek recognition? Mr. Frost.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The American people deserve full transparency, and anyone who has relevant information about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes must be compelled to come forward and share with this committee. Wealth and power cannot shield people from accountability from this committee. It is the victims of these horrific crimes who deserve protection, not Jeffrey Epstein and the people associated with him. We all agree. We want to hear from former President Bill Clinton. But committee Republicans have failed to conduct a serious investigation. For instance, they refused to hold Attorney General Pam Bondi in contempt for failure to release 99% of the Epstein files on a bipartisan law that we all passed on the House floor, and B, that had a deadline. And B, they refused to hold Ghislaine Maxwell accountable for defying this committee's subpoenas. We all know that President Trump has a long-standing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. His administration continues to obstruct the release of the Epstein files for this reason. We've seen photos of them together. Even Elon Musk posted, @Real Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason why they have not been made public. President Trump's own Mar-a-Lago club appears to come up often in connection to Jeffrey Epstein. From reporting, we know that Epstein was deeply involved with Mar-a-Lago. He was a frequent visitor to the club for years. The club sent employees, usually young women, to Epstein's mansion for massages, manicures, and other spa services. Staff members from the club made frequent calls to Epstein's home in Palm Beach, and on these calls, Epstein engaged in sexually suggestive behavior, such as exposing himself. And in 2000, Ghislaine Maxwell recruited Epstein's trafficking victim from Mar-a-Lago, where she was working as an employee. This committee must also investigate what Mar-a-Lago club members and the staff knew about Jeffrey Epstein's crimes. Getting documents from Mar-a-Lago is about uncovering evidence, holding these people accountable, and doing right by the victims of these horrific crimes. So we are all for making sure that we hear from everyone. I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican. I'm tired of rich people trying to evade justice and accountability, period. But you can't do it just for the party you disagree with. You can't do it in a politically motivated way. So here's the opportunity to show it's not a politically motivated thing. Let's also make sure that we get these documents from Mar-a-Lago. So with that, pursuant to Clause 2K6 of House Rule 11, I move that the House shall subpoena the Mar-a-Lago Club and all entities under common ownership or control with the Mar-a-Lago Club to provide the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform with 1. All documents, communications, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein, to include but not limited to personnel files and records, client files and records, massage and spa services records, complaints and grievances filed against Jeffrey Epstein, internal communications, and billing statements. 2. a list of all Mar-a-Lago Club personnel who provided massages on behalf of the Mar-a-Lago Club between 1997 and 2003, regardless of whether such personnel were contractors or formerly employed masseuses or otherwise. And 3, a list of all Mar-a-Lago Club personnel who were employed as or acted as managers of the Mar-a-Lago Club Spa between 1997 and 2003.
A motion was made by Mr. Frost. The motion is improper as the item is not on the agenda. Any other chair recognizes?
So Mr. Chair, you want to use procedure to push back accountability?
No, we're holding people accountable today. That's why we're here.
Well, why won't you move to make sure that we get the relevant documents from Mar-a-Lago? That I just read this, and you're saying it's because it's not on the agenda that we can't move forward with this? You have full discretion of this committee to say, you know what, let's have a vote in a bipartisan way to say we want the documents from Mar-a-Lago.
I don't have full discretion. It's in the rules. We vote on a rules package at the beginning of the
You're able
Congress.
to say right now that we can vote on this.
We cannot vote on it. It's in our rules. We'll be breaking our rules. We have to apply to the rules too. We're not like the Clintons.
No. You are hiding behind process to protect these Mar-a-Lago documents, and I think it's disgraceful.
Chair recognizes Mr. Cloud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing was noted in the Clintons' letters is they said the subpoenas were illegal. I'd be curious to know if the ranking member thinks that they're illegal. And with that, I'd yield the rest of my time to you.
Thank you, Mr. Cloud. I want to make sure everyone is aware. On February 11th, Attorney General Bondi will be appearing as the sole witness in front of the Judiciary Committee. Ms. Crockett is a member of the Judiciary Committee. I would assume, I don't want to speak for Ms. Crockett, but I would assume you'll ask her questions about the Epstein investigation and her progress towards releasing the documents. Mr. Massey is a member of the Judiciary Committee. He's already stated publicly he's going to spend his 5 minutes asking the Attorney General about the Epstein documents. So the Attorney General is slated to be in front of Congress, and I'm pretty confident that just about everybody on that committee is going to ask the Attorney General where we are with the document production. So I think that's important to note. February 11th, she's slated to be in front of the Judiciary Committee. And with the discharge petition, when the House voted for that, we issued the subpoenas for the Epstein documents. Then we all voted for the discharge petition. The discharge petition has jurisdiction in the Judiciary Committee. So she's going to be in front of the Judiciary Committee. The next week we're in session. So I think that's important to note. Do any other members seek? Okay, Mr. Lynch, then. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would remind the gentleman, and I'm sure he knows this, that the Oversight Committee is the principal investigatory committee in the House. And we have a responsibility. It may be a shared responsibility with Judiciary, but we nevertheless have a responsibility. And we are the ones who issued that subpoena. This committee did. We are the ones who sat with the victims, right? We looked them in the eye, including the Speaker of the House. We looked them in the eye, these women who have been struggling to get justice for many, many years, and we promised them, every member of this committee, we promised them that we would do everything under our power to make sure they finally receive justice. And here we are today. Now, with millions and millions of documents requested back in August, we've still received, what, 1% of the documents? This is evidence of wrongdoing in many cases. And yet we're allowing Attorney General Bondi to obstruct justice, basically. Even the little bit of evidence that she has provided, she also included a statement that basically said, don't believe this evidence, there's a lot of falsity in these. I mean, I have never seen an Attorney General in this country provide evidence and then give an opinion on that evidence to the legislature, to the Congress. That is unheard of. But it shows her willingness to do whatever she can to obstruct justice from being delivered. The second thing I want to say is, if we are truly interested in in getting information relative to this investigation, there should be some underlying basis for that. And I have reviewed all of the evidence that's been made available so far. I find nothing that points to Secretary Clinton in this at all. Yes, she was Secretary of State at one point, but the information that we're trying to get with respect to Secretary of State is available from any Secretary of State that served in that office with respect to trafficking. So there is no direct reason, no direct evidence to point to Secretary Clinton in any of this. And yet, while those millions of documents are being denied us, we're pulling someone forward, I think, for the point of embarrassment, public embarrassment, and because of the ill will on the part of the president to bring her forward for embarrassment, but not for the purpose of gaining helpful information for this investigation. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield the balance of my time to the ranking member, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Congressman Lynch. Mr. Comer, I just want to be just pretty clear about two things, and one particularly something that you said. Let me just start by saying that you noted in your comments that your concern and your biggest concern was the issue of the transcript. And I want to just go back really quick, because you and I share respect for subpoenas. You and I share that we want the former president to answer questions. Is that correct?
Correct.
Great. And so does every other member of this committee. We want the former president to answer questions of this committee. And we want not just the former president, but everyone to follow subpoenas of this committee. So let's agree on that. But to be clear, President Clinton, the former president, has submitted a signed declaration. He's offered to sit with you and me and answer questions. He's offered to have staff in the room to transcribe and be there while those questions are being answered. And his request was to do it in a dignified way. Your concern, as you brought up in your last comments, was that he was unwilling to do a recorded transcript. That's actually also not true. And to be clear, there's been public reporting, including in articles that came out over the weekend, that they have not ruled out a recorded transcript. I want to ask the president questions. Chairman Comer, I want to ask President Clinton questions. Don't you?
That's why we're here.
I want to ask President Clinton questions and a recorded transcript and with our members of our staff. Would you like to do that also?
May I make a comment on the transcript? They have not agreed to a transcript. Staff notes are not equivalent.
They've actually made public reporting.
So they're wanting me to make note. They said, okay, Comer can take notes, but they've called us all liars, and you know how the Clintons have gone on offense, and look, they don't get to make the rules. We make the rules.
Can I have the rest of my time back?
Yeah. Go
okay,
ahead.
thank you. I want to be clear, because this is an email actually that from the Clinton lawyers. You have this actually. To be clear, at no point were we opposed to the creation of a record of the interview, which is why we offered to allow the note takers previously. They go on. You have this email, sir. So I guess my question to you is, do you want to sit down and ask President Clinton questions? Actually, can I have my time back?
Will the ranking member we'll recognize Garcia, then Mr. Donald will be next. So
thank you. So my question to you, Mr. Comer, again, is if we want to actually ask questions of President Clinton, of which those of us in the minority want to do, then let's get him in. Let's negotiate a recorded transcription of that interview to further our investigation. I thank you for the yield, Mr. Lynch.
Time's expired. Chair recognizes Mr. Donalds.
Chairman, point of clarification. Both President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were subpoenaed by the committee to come in for a transcribed interview. Is that correct?
For a deposition.
Excuse me, for a deposition. Chairman, I've been in these closed depositions a number of times in my time being on the Oversight Committee. I failed to see what President Clinton's talking about with respect to a dignified manner. Every time I've been involved in any of these conversations, even when it was former President Biden's son came in for one of those, and I'm not trying to bring up all the Hunter stuff, it's just a point I'm making. I think everybody just take the temperature down, relax. even those the closed door depositions have always been held in a dignified manner. Members have had questions outside of questions from committee staff, but members on both sides of the aisle had an ability to answer those questions. Those interviews are recorded. The transcripts of those interviews are provided to the public. I fail to see what special accommodations President Clinton and Secretary Clinton were looking for. Chairman, can you help me understand this? Or even a ranking member. I'm really trying to understand. I'm not trying to make a point. We do too much of that here. I'm trying to understand, because if we're holding a new meeting to replace what the committee already requested, my question is why?
Mr. Garcia is willing to answer the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Donalds. I appreciate the question. Look, I think the committee first, I'm not here to defend the Clintons, to be clear. That's their job is to negotiate with the committee, and in this case, you have the majority. Their job is to negotiate with the majority on coming in for a binding subpoena, to be clear. But I'll also note that this committee has historically made accommodations for a variety of folks. In fact, I think it is a bit hypocritical that when this very subpoena for the Clintons were actually made, I believe there were an additional 5 to 6 other subpoenas that were issued to numerous other members of former administrations, attorney generals, and so forth. Every one of those other subpoenas, I think maybe with the exception of one, were given special accommodations. In fact, they were actually allowed to just send their responses in writing. Is that correct, Mr. Comer?
That is. May I respond to that?
Yes, in just 1 second. And so accommodations are made, and so while every other folks in that group were given special accommodations, that's been typically the case. And I'll finally say just this. Like you, I want to have President Clinton answer questions. I think they are trying to negotiate that with the majority, and they have been clear that it being transcribed is not an issue. They've not ruled that out. And so let's negotiate with the Clintons and let's get them to answer our questions.
Chairman, since I guess we're on my time, and by the way, ranking member, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Chairman, you were mentioning you were going to inject your commentary with respect to special accommodations that have been made for previous witnesses. I don't know if you want to expound on what the ranking member said or not.
I would love to. So, first of all, you talk about ongoing negotiations. We have been negotiating for 5 months. This is clearly a stall tactic, hoping that the time clock runs out and the House flips and that you all let them off the hook. But secondly, you mentioned, and I mentioned this in my open statement, there were names on that initial list with the Summerlee motion and the Scott Perry amendment. Attorney General Holder, Lynch, Sessions, and Garland, as well as Comey, they all complied and had written statements under the penalty of perjury that they had no knowledge of anything with Epstein, that they weren't directly involved in the investigation and basically had no personal relationship. I think we would all agree the Clintons had a personal relationship with both Epstein and Maxwell. It's from the evidence that we've received thus far from the estate and all the other documents that we have thus far, it appears that Jeffrey Epstein visited the Clinton White House 17 times while he was president, and then post-presidency, it appears that Bill Clinton flew on Epstein's plane at least 27 times. So there's a huge difference between the knowledge and relationship with the Clintons and Epstein and Maxwell versus the former attorneys general. And another note, I don't know if it was Mr. Bell or whoever said that we only are interested in Democrats. We grilled Bill Barr and Alex Acosta, and they are very Republicans. In fact, they were members of the Trump cabinet. Now, I've been on the Oversight Committee 9 years. We've had 4 other committee chairs. We've had since I've been here, we've had Jason Chaffetz, Trey Gowdy, Elijah Cummings, and Carolyn Maloney. I don't ever remember a time, and I could be wrong. If I am, I'm sure you all will correct me, but I don't remember a time when Carolyn Maloney or Elijah Cummings subpoenaed a high-ranking Democrat to come in for a grilling. So to imply that this is partisan, that is just simply not true. We've already had two very high, the former Attorney General of the United States under Trump and the former Labor Secretary and U.S. Attorney. So we've done that. And then one other thing with the Clintons, and I'll yield back. One of the arguments the Clintons made, Mr. Garcia, was that our subpoenas were unlawful. Do you agree that the subpoenas we issued the Clintons are unlawful?
I believe that all of our subpoenas that we have issued have been lawful, sir.
Okay. Just any other members seek recognition?
Ms. Brown, sir.
Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's clear to me that the purpose of this meeting today is just to continue this committee's agenda of political theater, plain and simple. Democrats have been very clear, abundantly, repeatedly, and without room for ambiguity. We want to hear from anyone who has information about the Epstein crimes. And yet, when former President Clinton and former Secretary Clinton offered to cooperate with this committee to submit sworn statements, to provide what they know, to engage in good faith, the majority said no. And that's what brings us to why we're really here today. The majority is rushing to hold in contempt two private citizens who have demonstrated their desire to cooperate with this committee and who have called for the release of every file on Jeffrey Epstein, all while the Department of Justice and Attorney General Pam Bondi are breaking the law in plain sight. Here are the facts. The DOJ was required by statute to release the Epstein files by December 19th, 2025. The deadline has passed by more than a month. And what have we received? 1%. 1% is not compliance. 1% is not transparency. 1% is a cover-up. What about the 1% they actually release? We've seen redactions that are extensive, unusual, and very likely illegal. And what's more, the Epstein Files Release Act, passed by supermajorities in this Congress and signed into law by this president, required the DOJ to send a report to Congress by January 3rd, 2026. More than 2 weeks later, what have we received from the DOJ? Nothing. So if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were really serious about uncovering the truth and government and accountability, we would be demanding answers from the administration. We would be demanding answers from Attorney General Bondi. We would be demanding the release of the 99% of the Epstein files still sitting at the DOJ. So I have some very simple questions. Where is the subpoena for Attorney General Bondi? Where is the hearing on DOJ's failure to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act? Where is the accountability for the redactions, page after page after page? This vote feels less like oversight and more like a distraction. A distraction from the DOJ's lawlessness, a distraction from a broken promise of transparency, a distraction from the embarrassment of a co-equal branch of government choosing complicity over accountability, and a distraction from survivors who deserve this truth. If this committee is serious, then we must hold the Department of Justice accountable. Release the files, all of them, and stop playing politics with justice. Survivors deserve better. And with that, I yield the balance of my time to the ranking member.
Thank you, Representative Brown. I just want to Chairman, I want to just respond to something that you said. I think it's important. First, I just want to read the folks of who the subpoenas you have chosen not to enforce. Alberto Gonzalez, who we subpoenaed on that same day, I believe, you did not enforce. Eric Holder, of course, former AG, did not enforce. Loretta Lynch, you chose not to enforce. Jeff Sessions, you chose not to enforce. Merrick Garland, who I think it'd be important to have answer questions, you chose not to enforce. Robert James Comey, you chose not to enforce. In fact, I have Attorney General Gonzalez's letter. It says, "Dear Chairman Comer, this letter is to confirm that consistent with my conversations with the committee general counsel, I have no present memory or decisions or conversations related to the investigation and prosecution of Epstein matter during my tenure as U.S. Attorney General." He, of course, was the Attorney General when the whole Alex Acosta U.S. Attorney matter was in front of a critical time in this investigation. Now, you chose not to enforce that because you mentioned that this letter is under penalty of perjury. The declaration the Clintons also made and sent to you to answer some of those questions were also under penalty of perjury. I just want to clarify that. And then with the remainder of my time, Mr. Chairman, I think it's important to note that you talked a lot about the importance of our subpoenas and that we should all support this committee's subpoenas. And I agree with you, sir, and I want to hear from the Clintons. It's also important to note that we have members of this committee, Congressman Jim Jordan, Congressman Andy Biggs, Congressman Scott Perry, who are obviously very outspoken, which we like to engage with. Now, they're not here, and that's okay. Now, you also know, sir, that all three of them defied legally binding subpoenas issued by the January 6th committee relating to their efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So we should be clear that the majority chooses to be very selective on which subpoenas they want to enforce or talk about. We have members of the majority that themselves have defied subpoenas. So once again, I ask you, Mr. Chairman, let's ask President Clinton the questions that we have. Let's have him come in and testify in a way that we can negotiate, and let's get all the release of the files done immediately. Thank you.
Would you yield? Could I respond to that?
Sure, I have no more time, but I'm happy to respond.
So you say we didn't enforce the subpoenas. We did enforce. They complied and testified under the penalty of perjury that they had no knowledge. Now, the Clinton declarations were short bullet points, almost like talking points. And the evidence is clear that the Clintons did have a relationship with them. Now, again, I've said publicly millions of times, there's no one's accusing the Clintons of wrongdoing, but the fact that they were that close, and the fact that I've never seen a sit-down interview with Bill Clinton where he's answered questions about his relationship with Epstein and Maxwell like the current president has. So we have complied and enforced all of our subpoenas, 100% of our subpoenas. So I just want to make that very clear.
Can I respond to you, sir? Sure. Just to be clear, you're talking about two declarations. The declaration that you chose to use as something that you moved on to not bring him in was 1/6 the size of the Clinton declaration. I'm looking at the Alberto Gonzalez response to you, sir, that you chose to dismiss, and it is one sentence long. You just pointed out the Clinton declaration, which is 6 times as long. And so I just think you are using interesting points to make comparisons. Let's just be clear and get back to the facts. Let's bring President Clinton in to have a conversation with this committee. You are instead choosing to try to prosecute President Clinton and send him to jail, which is part of criminal prosecution, before having him answer questions to this committee. Him and his team have been trying to negotiate. We want to hear from President Clinton. I'm not sure that you do, sir.
You don't think I want to hear from President
Chairman
Clinton?
Comer, can I, Chairman?
But before I recognize Ms. Luna, who'll be next, I believe, are you willing to accept those bullet points as testimony, or do you want to hear from Clinton?
I want to hear from President Clinton.
Then I don't know what the point is of talking about their bullet points. I mean, we all know they had a relationship. So.
Well, sir, I'm just responding to the fact that you mentioned that you're dismissing other legal subpoenas with 1-sentence answers, and you're the one that pointed out the Clinton's declaration, which is also under penalty of perjury.
Do you think that Eric Holder or Lynch or Jeff Sessions or Merrick Garland had more? I mean, do you want to bring them all in?
I would love to have former Attorney General Merrick Garland in front of this committee to answer questions as to why more of the files weren't released. I've actually said that publicly. And so, sir, I think what it comes down to is we all want to get to the truth. We all want justice for the survivors. And I think more information is better. And so I think our position is that it is clear to me that President Clinton is negotiating to come in front of this committee. And it may not be exactly what you and the lawyer and your team want to see as far as that negotiation, or you're not satisfied with the progress, but they continue to negotiate. They have not rolled out a transcript. Let's get them in front of this committee. Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Mr. Gill, then Ms. Luna. Mr. Gill has a bigger. Go ahead. No, Miss. Who's next? Ms. Luna. Go ahead, Ms. Luna. Then Ms.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to remind the American people that I was the member that made the motion to hold Merrick Garland in contempt of Congress, and every Democrat voted against it. And in addition to that, 3 of my Republican colleagues voted against it, one of which did not come back because his voters decided that he was too swampy for them. So
Okay.
I just like to point that out. But aside from that,
Well, Ms. Luna, it's been pointed out to me you've already had 5 minutes. Somebody will probably yield you some time, so I've got to.
if I could just finish real quick. If we're looking to see why the files have not been released yet, look no further than the judge Engelmeyer,
I'm sorry, Miss
who's actually been
Luna.
responsible
I'm sorry.
for
If
denying
someone can
Ro Khanna
yield
and
you some
Massey's
time.
special counsel. I'm just saying, I'm making a point.
All right.
This is all
So we
political
haven't
games
recognized the Republican on this. Miss Mace, do you want to be recognized?
That would be great, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of documents I would like to enter into the record this morning with unanimous consent. First of all, I want to ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to stop playing politics with justice. Not a single one of you voted for your own party to be held in contempt. I'm the only member of this body, of this committee, that has held both Republicans and Democrats alike in contempt for defying a congressional subpoena. So the hypocrisy is real, and I don't want to hear anyone on the other side of the aisle say no one is above the law here on this. We're talking about human trafficking, sex trafficking. We're talking about children, girls as young as 14 being assaulted, being trafficked by wealthy and powerful people. This is not political. This is personal. This should be nonpartisan. We should be working on this together. And it's incredible that we're politicizing rape, or politicizing sex trafficking, or politicizing this entire Epstein thing. And it just, as a survivor, I'm telling you, it should not be. And I've done a lot of work, Mr. Chairman, in advocacy and writing legislation for victims of abuse, male, female, and children, man, woman, and child. South Carolina, my home state, Mr. Chairman, has a huge problem with with all sorts of violent crimes, but sex trafficking in my state is up by over 400%. We have domestic violence in our state where you can't get a trial. And there was a case last year where a woman 2 years ago was kidnapped by her boyfriend, beaten to a pulp, her face just beaten in. 2 years after he kidnapped her and beat her, he murdered her on Mother's Day because our local solicitor refused to prosecute that case. And I have rogue solicitors and prosecutors and attorneys general who aren't doing anything to protect the people of South Carolina, women and children especially. Recently, my attorney general prosecuted a case against convicted pedophile Donald Gresh. Donald Gresh was convicted of having 1,900 images of toddlers as young as 3 being raped by animals. Donald Gresh, under the prosecution of my Attorney General Alan Wilson, served 1 day in jail. 1 day. Donald Gresh isn't the only pedophile, convicted pedophile, that we prosecute like that. My Attorney General Alan Wilson prosecuted this case. This is Travis Reed Gay. Well, the other thing, too, is that Donald Gresh, he was facing 60 years in jail, got 1 day. Travis Reed Gay was facing 70 years, 7 charges and 70 years in jail in South Carolina. My Attorney General prosecuted this case. He pled guilty in November, didn't serve any time. He got probation. He violated his probation 11 days later, and if he violated his probation, he was to serve time in jail. The magistrate or judge, probably didn't have a law degree, let him out hours later. He has not served any required time for this kind of thing. And I did a press conference with a bunch of moms, over a dozen moms last week in Charleston, South Carolina, and there was a local media blackout. I asked, was it my attorney general who prosecuted this case and led this pedophile out on the streets? Was he the one that led the media blackout? Well, I want my attorney general in my state to know that a young child came forward after seeing my press conference and recognized this man. She filed a police report the same day because he allegedly followed her in a park the week before. This is Scott Spivey, killed, shot with a bullet in the back, shot at 17 times, not prosecuted by my attorney general. So I'm going to ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, to enter those 3 images into the record. This is Weldon Boyd. This is Scott Spivey's killer who shot him in the back and has never really been investigated or prosecuted for that killing in South Carolina. I would like to enter that into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection, so ordered.
This is Logan Federico. She was executed a year ago, yesterday to the day, by a man named Alexander Dickey. Alexander Dickey was a convicted criminal. He had 39 arrests, 25 felony charges. He executed this beautiful 22-year-old daughter of Stephen Federico in cold blood after stealing a gun. If her killer, Alexander Dickey, hadn't been let out by a rogue magistrate or judge or a prosecutor solicitor that didn't care, she would be alive today. Mr. Chairman, I would like to enter her image and her killer's image into the record.
Without objection to order.
I have another image. This is Eric Bowman. Eric Bowman beat his wife and has been alleged and is being investigated for other abuses against women and potentially underage girls. He was just let out free, Mr. Chairman, out of jail in South Carolina. He is a predator. I have reported him to law enforcement. He's under investigation, but I have written bill after bill about predators like Eric Bowman, about voyeurism, about these sort of criminal sexual allegations. I would like to enter his image into the record.
Without objection to order.
I have two more.
Can we get it? Your time's expired, but I'll recognize you for a UC later on, because I want to make sure everybody stays within their 5 minutes. Chair recognizes Mr. Bell from Missouri.
You know, first and foremost, I think we're doing a disservice to the victims in this case when we refer to it as the Epstein files. It's sex trafficking evidence, and let's call it what it is. And as a prosecutor, we prosecuted these kind of cases when I was DA back home in St. Louis County, and I met with every single victim and victim's family because I wanted them to know that I was here for them, and I thought it was important that we look them in the eye and let them know that we're going to do everything we can to bring them justice and treat them with the dignity and respect that they deserve. And this is no different. That said, I think in DC, what I've learned in my 11 months here is that this DC disease that of staying in this partisan bubble is something that you have to continue to be aware of, so that you don't fall into these same hypocritical traps. And I talked to Jamie Raskin because